Bradley Shane with M2O. Specific to the idea of Canadian content, what are we doing to really encourage online and digital content when you still take the fact that if you take 3 months of YouTube content and take all of you out there combined times 2, you have more Canadian content on YouTube being generated for free. So what are we doing to truly innovate the online space and to bring that content forward?
I think on the digital, it's interesting. I don't think of YouTube right now until they get into scripted, professionally produced, or unless they're airing that kind of stuff. I don't think of user-generated right now as competitive. That viewing and that consumption hasn't taken away from the kind of entertainment that we produce and deliver. So I'm very proud of the growth and the size of actually our long-form digital delivery of video, whether it be on mobile. We have a spectacular live streaming mobile platform that's available to mobile carriers, and all of our websites and our tablet apps are really significant sources now of viewing of CTV and our specialty content.
I'd say, you know, I would completely disagree with Kevin on his YouTube comment, and I think that we have to really worry as an industry and as a video content industry that we come along here and then all of a sudden it goes like that. And the example I can give is reading the recent article about the newspaper industry, because everybody said newspapers were dead in 2000 or the late 1990s. The newspaper industry was just good, and it didn't go like this. It just went like this, and then it went. You know, the New York Times went from a $60 share price to a $5 share price almost overnight. You know what happened with the Ottawa Journal and the Edmonton Journal, the Ottawa Citizen, and the Calgary Herald last week. The Post is down to 4. And I just worry that YouTube, and if we don't address the gentleman's question in terms of developing digital Canadian content in a more robust fashion, then all of a sudden YouTube and networks like Much Music or MTV just all of a sudden come like that, and that's what I worry about if we don't find a way to attack the over the tops and the new entrances in the building. I look at Shaw and Bell and CBC as great competitors, but they certainly are just one component of the competitive industry now. And I look differently. I look at YouTube and Google as direct competitors, and I look more at what's going to happen in the next 5 years. As far as documentary producers, we have the lowest CMF envelope, considerably lower. We're certainly going to work feverishly to try to get that up in the coming years. We now have a full Canadian content division, which is growing, led by Claire Freeland. And so we're now we did very little documentaries in years past, but we're starting to see a lot more action.
I just want to, because I just can't lose the quality content. I just think that the YouTube phenomenon, it takes quality content. It's interesting when you look at Lilyhammer being produced by Netflix, or you look at the Google productions that they're funding, and I think that Google on YouTube has like 100 channels that they have launched and that they're funding, and much of that I see is that's going to compete the same way that we compete for quality. And I look at the volume of production that comes out of this room, out of Hollywood, out of other sources, and even still, that they're still going to face the same odds of success in creating, and the creative process hasn't changed because of it being paid for by digital dollars. The creative process is still the same to garner big audiences. And I'm encouraged, because even though our kids are multitasking and they're watching content here and they're doing everything else, ratings for 18 to 34-year-olds, it's the fastest growing viewership of linear television right now. So the 18 to 34-old age group is actually pretty healthy right now. And so against all of this other consumption,
I agree. And the 25 to 54 demo is the fastest growing online, and they're the fastest growing, believe it or not, in the likes of YouTube and so forth. I just fundamentally believe that the over the tops are and the likes of Google and Apple announcing they are going to produce 10 movies and on their own. Google is going to get into original content. I just believe that it's something that we really have to have our eyes wide open about, that they are going to take a bite out of the business.
This reminds me of 1982 when the first Canadian paid channels were being considered for licensing, and CTV and Global said, no, we don't. So the big private channels different said, no, there's only room for a handful of channels. Don't license these new things. They're not going to amount to much. And roll forward 30 years, it amounted to a lot. And that creativity and innovation came from the edges, and it was seen to be almost as kind of off the mainstream as YouTube is today.
All I'm saying is that the industry can change like that. The iPad changed everything. Will the iPad change everything with Apple TV? I just think that we just really have to, as an industry, be prepared to adapt very quickly to the changes, because they happen so fast.
They've got just to build on that, they've got so much economic scope. It's a scary thought to what companies they could buy. And you think of it like it's hard to make great content, right? And it's not in every company's DNA, but their capitalization is unbelievable.
Funds like Google is coming out with co-production are quite impressive. I hear about people, independent producers who we work with who are going off and make deals with Google. And that's a new place for them, and I think, but like you said, Michael, I think it goes back to, there's going to be a point at which we're going to be at a breaking point, perhaps, but the consumption just seems to keep growing, and I think, the points that Kevin and you make are kind of the same, and that's, yes, there's going to be more, so watch out, but at the same time, it doesn't seem to be affecting certain areas. It seems that the consumption just we kind of expand.
And I'm saying, just don't fall into the same. Like, it's not affecting it. It wasn't affecting newspapers either. Everyone was saying that newspapers was going along. In fact, subscription was going higher, ad revenue was going higher, and then it just went. And that's all I'm saying. So I'm not saying like it's time to panic now, but be aware that it can happen very quickly.
It happens in the music business too, and I think you can look at that to see where, because we seem to follow behind music in terms of what happens to us as an industry, and they find their level. Things have changed completely compared to what they were before, but I think that goes back to what we've all been saying, which is the pressure that we're under has to deal with change, and the change happens quickly, and it's happening. You can't anticipate it, but all you can anticipate the fact is that there's going to be change. And I think the interesting thing is it's still the creative of the content that we have this debate whether it's distribution that's king, and it's because someone said to me distribution is king now. And I said, well, if distribution is king, then content's the kingdom. Because in the end, you can't, it's great to have all these great distribution platforms, and to be vertically integrated is obviously an incredibly good advantage in many ways, but at the same time, you have to have great content to deliver. And we work with all these guys. And we work with Netflix, and we work with Apple, and we work with, we have the ability to kind of spread that content throughout.
I think, Michael, what I think will happen, though, is I think traditional players, I think the content, you talked about the quality of what we saw in LA this year and in the last couple of years, and there's no question that channels like AMC and HBO and a lot of specialties and things that, that have been around relatively recent are putting a lot of pressure on the creative process that the traditional networks are under, and I think they're producing much better quality content as a result of it. If Google and Netflix and these guys catch on to content that's successful, then that's great. The competitive environment makes everybody better, and I think that they'll adapt. The last thing I want to say, though, I just want it to be on record for this room, because I'm not sure how appreciated it is. The biggest pressure point I see that makes it so hard for all of us to nurture a Canadian program and make it a Canadian hit. And I use Combat Hospital as an example of what I thought was a spectacular program, and a lot of hats off, and it performed outstanding in Canada, but didn't make it to a second season because of our need with the U.S. broadcast, with the U.S. broadcasters and networks being here, because of the difficulty we have in scheduling and nurturing Canadian hits, promoting them, and then if they don't do well in the U.S., there's just not a commitment there, and they can't get the international funding without the U.S. to stay on. We saw last week, Saving Hope was a huge success in Canada, and it did really lukewarm on NBC, and that's a huge concern about the survivability of that program. So I'd like to be able to, do a couple of things. I'd like to find a way to get control over our schedules, and non-simultaneous substitution is something I've been talking about as a possibility. And then I'd like for us to not be so dependent on a U.S. over-the-air network as a funding source. I think we have to find other ways.
It's tough to do. I mean, I think that we've had good success with, great success with Rookie Blue. Combat Hospital was a casualty. But it's only one of the many models, right? I mean, that's just one of the models. There's 100% Canadian content, no partnership model. There's U.S. partners. There's offshore partners. There's lots of ways to cut that.
We haven't gotten into the syndication or the simulcast business with the U.S. simply because we couldn't be in a position where we could let the U.S. control our schedule. But there are lots of ways. It's great that you can get the Saving Hopes and Rookie Blues out of the partnership with the U.S. But when we partner with the U.S., we look at people who don't come in over the border. So there is something in that about the effect of the channels when they come in over the border. The partners that you can have, and the partners that you choose. You have to choose wisely.
If we really knew what was the future of this industry, and we had the answers, then we'd all be as lovely as you, Mike.
I thought that's